Hi, I'm Captain Steve Draconis. We don't hear a lot about the Texas rig. It's not sexy. It doesn't have blades. It doesn't have a paint finish. The old Texas rig, that's a rig that you really should learn how to throw. There are a lot of reasons you should do it, and today we're going to find out how well it can do on a lake where we're probably going to have sunny skies, we're going to have calm water, and very clear water. Going to be very hard to fish. But really, I'm going to show you how to rig it. It's real simple. You don't need a lot of equipment. You need a bullet singer. This one right here is about a 3/16 ounce. You go ahead and put the line through that. Then for today, we're going to be throwing a 3/0 hook since we're going to be using a 5.5 inch bait. I like to throw a Palomar knot onto this. And you just double the line, pass it through the hook eye. And then when you get it through the hook eye, you do an overhand knot, very simple overhand knot. And the key part is going to be coming up where we're going to pull the tag end. So the tag end is sticking out right there. I'm pulling it as I lubricate it. You see the tag end got all twisted up? That's because it got burned, but guess what? We're cutting the tag end off. So we're going to have now this. Now I always, because of I've been doing it forever, I tie an overhand knot. It doesn't do anything except for reposition the tag. So now the tag is going to be pointing down instead of up. So if there's any debris or anything, it won't pick it up on there, and it's going to look like that. Okay. Now you're going to put a toothpick. Yeah, just a toothpick. We're going to peg, and we'll talk about pegging and not pegging, but we're going to peg now. And here's how I do it. I take the toothpick, I put it I get the line real close to the hook, put the toothpick in, kind of force it in, and once I get it forced in, I jiggle it back and forth until the point breaks off, and then my weight will stay pegged in that position. Now comes the bait. This bait, I've been making this one for a long time. I use a little bit of like a watermelon, kind of a green pumpkin. It's a laminate. I don't know if you can see this, but it's watermelon on this side, a little bit of green pumpkin on that side, and then I dip the tail in chartreuse. Texas rig, very simple. We're going to take the hook, we're going to put the bait on about 1/4 inch into the worm, have it come out so it looks like that, slide it up around to the offset part of the hook. And I'll talk about hooks in the video too, about how you decide what size hook to use. Now here comes the important part. I'm going to mark the bottom of this where this hook is on the worm. I'll put my thumb there. I'm going to take the hook, I'm going to put it right through, right where I marked it with my thumb. I'm going to straighten the worm out, pull the worm up a little bit, and now that's going to make a weedless Texas rig. We're going to see how well it does out here on the lake today, so stay tuned. Texas rig worm, almost extinct. A lot of guys don't throw it. They want something a little more pizzazz. That's an old word, isn't it? How often do you hear that used? Pizzazz. Well, this Texas rig worm, you back in there. No need to use forward-facing sonar or drop shot. Just a little bullet weight, toothpick, hook, and plastic worm. I'll talk more about this specific worm a little bit, but it's a hand pour that I make. Nothing special to it. About 5 inches, 3/0 hook. I like using the 10-pound test Gamma Edge fluorocarbon. So let's start with 10-pound test. I'm using that because I want a thinner line. It has nothing to do with the strength. It's just the thinner line. I want a thin line. A couple of reasons. It casts well. Look at that. Casts really well. It will sink quicker because the line is thinner and allow that won't hold that bait up. I want it to get to the bottom. That's where I want to fish. It also doesn't have as much resistance on either end. So when the fish picks up the bait, he won't feel the resistance of the line. And on the other end, I'll feel the bite better because the line is more sensitive because it has less stretch, but it also, because it's not dragging through as much water, I can feel it better. And the hook set, being able to get the hook set to rip through the water quicker, the line to whip through the water quicker on your hook set is really important, especially when you're making long casts. You make a long cast, that's a long way to set the hook. And speaking of hook sets, what I do for a hook set is not a snap set where I'm snapping the rod straight up. It's kind of a sweep snap, so I kind of snap and sweep it at the same time, and gets me a much longer hook set to take up line quicker. I also want a fast reel, 7-to-1, 8-to-1, something that's going to take up line really, really fast. I've got a 7'1" medium heavy, extra fast action, so the tip is kind of soft. It gives a good bit, but only for about a foot, and then it locks in and you can set the hook. I'm gonna make another pass through here. This is basically a point, and you can see all the trees here. The trees, I'm not worried about them. This is a point, and it's got some trees out there, but it's basically, I'm fishing the point, the top of the point closest to the deepest water. And we've got trees out here too that are in about 12-14 feet of water, so there are some out here. But when you can find stuff with your electronics or eyeballing stuff when the water's clear that is not visible most of the time, you're going to have a better fishing spot, especially in lakes that get fished a lot, because this area here just doesn't see a lot of fishermen. Their boats are right on top of this most of the time. Okay, just bumped off a piece of wood. Nothing there. There's a lot of trees down here on this deeper side of this. Most guys, like I say, will put their boat right up against there, fish that wood that they can see. I don't care about that. I want to fish this wood out here, especially now. You know, if it was springtime, yeah, I'd go in there and probably cast from here into that bank. But summertime, it's hot. Water's 75 degrees. It's sunny. There's very few clouds in the sky. We just started getting a couple clouds to roll through, and hopefully that'll help a little bit. Almost no chop on the water, and it looks like there's like a ditch that runs through here. All right, that one thumped it on the drop. Okay, we don't mind catching these guys. Nice fish, nothing in his gullet. No, we're gonna let you go and try to catch another one. So what I see here is there's like a ditch between this row of trees. I don't have any idea what it was back when they built this thing, but it definitely has a ditch running through it. And when you get a cast that long away from you, you've got to be able to swing set that hook. And that was like just the little tap, and I just committed to it. But the longer you can make a cast in clear water, the better off you are. You know, a lot of times you go through a spot, oh, I should have caught a fish there. Well, you know, if you're fishing clear water, there's another bite. Let me see if he's still there. He just sort of tapped it. Yeah, he's still there. Little better fish. But if you can Oops. Stop, sit, stay. Okay. He's been caught before. That's catch and release for you. That's a problem for fisheries managers. There's so much catch and release and not much predation or consumption, and it's tough. You know, these things reproduce so much, and then you end up with just too many fish in a lake and not very big. You know, the fish don't get very big because they basically starve themselves out. What I'll do is I'll try to cast across this ditch. So that's the other side of the ditch. It's falling into the ditch, and then I'll pull it through. We're on the shallow side over here. Over there it's about 12 feet deep. Over here it's about 6 or 7. So that's the deepest water close by. And any of the fish that are living up in this grass or coming up in this grass to feed will go into these ditches and kind of just hang out there when it gets real hot like this. But they'll come out at, you know, when it gets cooler, they'll come out and they'll be out here on these flats where you've got grass and probably more food when they want to feed. But when it's hot like this, sun's up, they just go a little bit deeper. One of the things about working a worm, a lot of guys overwork it. You know, you got to feel like you got to keep moving it, but you know, let it sit for a second. You know, you pulled it off the bottom, so that raised its exposure to fish nearby. Then you let it drop, they come over and take a look at it. And if you don't let them have time to really kind of like make up their mind, then shake it again, boom, that's when they'll hit it. But if you just keep the thing moving, they may not come over to take a look at it. My pattern today is basically throwing a Texas rig worm on 10-pound test gamma edge fluorocarbon. If I was going to be fishing just trees, if they were relating to trees, if the water, usually the muddier water and sunshine will put the fish right on the wood. They'll be around it all the time, but they'll be right on it when it's muddy. In that case, I would probably use a jig or something big, bulky plastic, you know, a much heavier hook, 16-pound instead of 10-pound fluorocarbon. Okay, so my success usually isn't in the middle of this ditch. It's on either one side or the other. When I find a ditch like this, they'll be on a drop. The ones we've caught so far have been on the deeper side of the drop, a little further away from the bank. But guys will overwork it. They'll instead of bringing your rod tip up, watch this. This is how. So we make our cast. I'm going to strip out some line to make sure the bait drops straight down. I don't want it to pendulum back to me. I'm watching the line in front of me to see if it pops or jumps or starts to move, see if anybody picked it up on the way down. Now with my rod, I'm going to check now. Okay, nobody picked it up on that initial drop, but I'm not going to bring my rod all the way straight up over my head and sometimes behind my head. I see guys do that a lot. I'm going to keep that rod out in front of me. And I'm just going to tighten up the line a little bit, raise the rod, raise my wrist with that. So it's not just raising the rod with my wrist, lifting my wrist up to get that bait to come off the bottom if I want to. If I get a bite and that rod tip is up over my head, I have no room left to set the hook. So keep it about 1 or 2 o'clock. Get in the habit of doing that. Force yourself to do it, and you'll catch a lot more fish because you'll be ready for them. Even if you make a mistake, you're in better position to set the hook on a fish when that rod is at 1 or 2 o'clock than it is when it's at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock. Some guys will go even back behind their heads. And I see them doing it. And the other thing I see them doing is doing it with one hand. Like they're that good, they could just shake that bait with one hand and then find that reel handle and set the hook with the other one as soon as they get a bite. Well, if you are that good, God bless you. But if you're like me, I need every advantage I can get. I'm going to keep both hands on the rod. My cranking hand is always going to be on the handle. Of course, my rod hand always going to have that rod. Just strip it out, let it fall down. Because if I don't do that, what happens is that bait will pendulum back towards me. I want it to fall straight down. Now, there's some times where I do want it to pendulum back to me, but few and far between. Like I got that guy. right, put him back. Always watch when that bait drops. There we go. Right off that tree limb. Not huge. They're fun to catch, aren't they? Texas rig, if you're learning to fish, I know, gosh, you could wacky rig a Senko and throw it out there. But if you were wacky rigging a weightless Senko right now, you'd be waiting 10, 12 seconds for it to get down to the bottom. And then you wouldn't be able to contact any of the cover. So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting right up next to a tree limb and waiting to contact that tree limb because I know that's where the fish are. And they're in, 10, 12 feet of water. If you're wacky rigging a Senko, you'd be waiting a while for that to get down there. Now this is just open water fishing with a Texas rig. I'm not really eyeballing the target. I'm not fishing heavy cover. I am looking when I can to see any trees with my live scope, but for the most part I know that what I'm fishing is basically water that nobody else fishes. They can't see anything out here unless they're using their electronics. They're not gonna know the fish are out here as far as finding fish cover. Again, I'm not using live scope to help me find fish. I'm just using it to help me stay on cover or pick better targets, because I'm casting 100 feet, getting that bait away from the boat, letting it go to the bottom, working it real slow. I'm not in a hurry to move the bait. I'll let it sit there and then I'll go ahead, lift it up, and test to see if there's a fish on there. Sometimes I'll just let it sit there a couple seconds, and then I'll slowly work it. Also, before I make that cast, I'm looking at my bait to see if it's still buttoned up. When I say buttoned up, I don't want that hook exposed. So I'll go ahead and just sort of give it a quick glance. Most of the time I can see that point's buried. If it's not buried, then I go ahead and fix it. But basically today, all I'm doing is one rod, one bait, just to show that this will work. And this is the one technique. You change the worm a little bit, maybe downsize the weight, increase the weight, just a handful of hooks, a couple different sizes. If I'm using a 6-inch bait, I'm going to use a 3/0 hook. I like the wide gap hook, what we call the wide gap. It's EWG, I guess, extra wide gap, some companies call it. I like that hook because it's easy on the plastics and they last longer. If you're fishing for money, you definitely want to use just a straight shank hook. Use that straight shank hook. You tear up a lot more baits with it, but when you set the hook, you get the fish. And then you have your basic offset worm hook, and they work pretty good too. There would be the second choice, but the one I like is the extra wide gap one, because you can skin hook it, stays weedless. You don't eat up a lot of plastics doing it. I'm not fishing for money, I'm just fishing for fun. And but if I was fishing for money, I definitely would go with that straight shank hook. So 3/0 for 6-inch bait. For smaller baits, 4 or 5-inch baits, I go to a 2/0, and for bigger baits, I go to a 4/0. So it's 2, 3, and 4/0. That's the 2/0, 3/0, 4/0. And weights. For weights, I try to go with the lightest weight I can get away with. If it's going to be windy, I can't use a 16th. If I'm fishing 20 feet, I don't want to use a 16th. I might use an 1/8. I might use a 3/16. I might even use a 1/4. I might even use a 5/8. Do the math on all. If you're not good with fractions, you'll have to keep up with me. But you know, the heavier the weight for you beginners, use a heavier weight. Use that 5/16, because what'll happen, or the 5/8, what'll happen is you'll feel the bottom much better, and you'll feel that bait much better. A lot of times, if you can't feel your bait, then you can't feel something different. You won't be able to feel that bite if you can't feel the bait. You have no idea. It's just sort of fluttering through there. That's why so many guys like throwing the Senko, because you don't have to feel anything. You just fish swallows it. You gut hook them. When they get to the end of the rope, it's like a dog on the end of a leash. You just reel them in. You better learn how to get hooks out of gut hooked fish, because you're going to gut hook a lot of fish with those things. So pegging for sure. If I'm pitching, I don't want any separation, so I want that thing pegged. I want it right on that bait. So if I get a bite, I don't want to have to be setting the weight or setting the bait on the weight that might be 2 feet away from the hook. So I'll be setting it in the right spot. So pegging is essential. If you don't peg, I think you get more action with the bait. So that weight slides over the cover first, maybe puts about 1 foot of separation, and then you pull, and that bait comes jumping over the top. It has a whole different action, because it's kind of almost weightless, almost neutral. So that works really good. And it's not like when you're setting the hook on, when you're pitching a dock or something, where you don't want that separation. You could take up the slack in that separation with that sweep, kind of sweep snap or snap sweep. I don't know what you want to call it, but I kind of like it. Snap and sweep and wind, and that fast reel, the slightly longer rod is a 7'1". I also use a 7'2" rod. I like both of those for this kind of technique. It helps you with the longer cast, but it helps you with the hook set on a longer cast. The trees for me in this scenario are not my targets, but they define, it's kind of like marker buoys for me. I know that tree is right on the edge of that drop off, and that's what I'm fishing. So if I stay close to that tree, that I will be dragging my bait right along the edge of that drop off, and that's where I've been getting most of my bites. All right, that was a piece of wood. Not in a hurry to get it out of there. That thing, bumped it. I'm in it again. I'm letting it sit there, even though it's pretty close to the boat. It's hard cover. Fish that are in hard cover will stay in hard cover. Very hard to get them to move, but not my favorite target when the water's real clear. Okay, that was a bite. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, fishy, we're gonna let you go. Get bigger. Okay, it's on the bottom. Fishing another depth change here. I think those fish really are biting pretty good today. You could come out and have a lot of fun. What I would do sometimes too is I would change my baits. Might have 2 or 3 rods set up the same way, same weight, same hook, same line, but a different color worm. Especially if you're going to fish one spot for a long time, just something slightly different. Something, maybe there's a big one down there that wants purple. Maybe one wants all watermelon or all green pumpkin. I try to make my baits, I pour my own, and I try to make them that They eat green pumpkin, watermelon. I will make some that have, I got one here. I'll try to make some that have purple or black and blue, those kind of colors. But on a hot fall day, when most people say, oh, it's too hot to fish, the water's still hot, it's fall, whatever the excuse is, you can still catch them. The other thing too is I like a faster reel so I can catch up with fish and get that hook set, but also to wind in real fast in between presentations. Like I make a presentation, when it gets back about 20 feet from the boat, I wind that sucker in and get ready to make another cast. You know, those little things will help you catch a lot more fish because you're making more casts. You know, if you can make an extra 100 casts a day, you're going to catch more fish. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the way to get more cast is that you bring it in when it gets close to the boat and you're pretty much sure you're not going to get a bite, which is about where I'm at right now on this particular cast. Just wind it in, and this is a 7-to-1, 7-3-to-1, and it's a fast reel, and get it back out there again. That rod, when it's in my left hand, it crosses over. I don't keep it out this way. I keep it right there. My eyes are lined up with the tip of that rod. I'm not looking at the tip of the rod. I'm looking at the line, and I'm trying to see the line as far away from the boat as I can. And if I can't see it, out in front of me, then you know, I try to find something that's a little bit closer. Even if it's just right here at the boat, I'm going to look at it and see if see if that line moves, jumps, pops. You got to watch, especially on the drop. Once you get a gauge of how deep the water is, once it drops, you go like, okay, it's 10 feet deep here, and it drops and it stops after maybe a count of 2. Then you know something's picked it up on the way down. Or you think it should be dropping down to 10, and all of a sudden it's going 11, 12, 13. It's going way down. So you know that it's going deeper. It's not going deeper, it's going further because the fish has picked it up and is swimming away with it. So just by watching your line, if you're not going to do anything else, I mean, that'll help you develop, you know, a sense of you using your eyesight to help you develop the other senses. So you can, if you see that line moving and you also feel it tap, then you'll get used to feeling what that's like, and you'll be able to set the hook better on and quicker on a lot of fish. I also check my drag constantly while I'm fishing during the course of the day. Sometimes you put your rod down and the star drag bumps something, or you kick it with your foot, or anyway, it'll end up changing your drag on you, tightening it or loosening it. Loosening it is just as bad as tightening. You over tighten it, you go to set the hook and you break that fish off. Especially use a 10-pound test, you want it set just right. If it's too loose, you go to set the hook and that hook won't go into the fish, your drag will just spin off. There's a bite, and that's what I was talking about, that drag. You got to have it just right. I hit it and it's stripped right out. There we go, nice largemouth bass. The Texas rig, do not overlook it. Wow, what a day. Caught a lot of bass today. We found them on drop-offs around 10 to 14 feet deep. Seemed to be the consistent pattern today. But using the Texas rig, using just this little thing that so many people forget about. It's a worm and it doesn't matter what color the worm is or what shape the worm is. Texas rigs will work. Follow some of the steps that I've talked about in this video. Stay tuned for more videos. If you like my channel, please like it. Please tell your friends about us. I'm Captain Steve Chaconis. Thanks for watching.